Top U.S. intel officers fielded tough questions today from Senate lawmakers about the war in Iran. CIA Director John Ratcliffe had a heated exchange with Colorado's Democratic Senator Michael Bennet. Listen to this.
I know, Director Ratcliffe, that you warned President Trump that if Israel assassinated the supreme leader, the IRGC would replace him with potentially a harder line puppet. In fact, I think what was clear is that the likelihood was that it would be a hardline puppet. Do you disagree with that characterization of the intelligence?
To that specific question, what we knew was, first of all, I guess I have to address up front, so much of what you related in there, the difference between political rhetoric versus...
It's not political rhetoric. I'm quoting the President of the United States.
Senator Bennet joins us now live. Senator, thank you so much for the time. You also asked the CIA director whether the war with Iran could become perpetual, because if the United States leaves and the same sort of regime remains in place, they would just build back their military capabilities and, in your words, do exactly what they have always done. So I wonder if we're at the point where the only way out of this situation is to replace the regime in Tehran.
That's a fair question. But then the question becomes, what would it take for the United States to, quote unquote, replace the regime in Iran? And I haven't heard a single person say that you could do that without ground troops in Iran. I've not heard a single intelligence estimate that's been different from that. And I can tell you the American people do not support putting troops on the ground in Iran. And in addition to that, we have deep, deep issues that we're confronting around the world with respect to Russia on the front line in Ukraine, and with respect to China, a meeting that President Trump has now had to cancel with Xi Jinping because he's now focused on what's going on in the Middle East. I mean, we've got a lot going on in the world right now. To have started off a war without a clear rationale from the president about why it was required for us to do it right now at this moment.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of concern about the potential for threats at home as a result of this conflict overseas. National security expert Richard Clarke described the country's counterterrorism capability as decimated, saying we're probably in worse shape now than we have been since 9/11. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that I'm not going to say it's as dire as he's saying, but I will say that we need to be very vigilant. We need to be vigilant here. We need to be vigilant at home. It's critical for us to be, where we can, deepening our relationships with our allies, because we rely on them for intelligence about our own national security and what's going on here, and they rely on us. And it's important for us to have those kind of partnerships. And I think when you've got a president whose foreign policy seems to be just to go it alone, to respond to his gut, his own sense, as he says, his own sense of morality, it becomes harder and harder and harder for our allies to support us in the efforts that ultimately is going to require us to do together. I said earlier today, the president had said we shouldn't be the world's policeman. I agree with that, but he's become the world's policeman, the world's jury, judge, and executioner, and that's not the way I don't think the American people want our foreign policy or our national security policy conducted at this moment, especially when there are such threats across the world, by the way, including from the mullahs in Iran.
To your point about remaining vigilant at home, Democrats have been pushing for changes to Trump's immigration policy, and as a result, DHS remains shut down. It's been so for more than 30 days. Are you at all concerned that a lack of funding for DHS makes Americans less safe, less prepared for potential attacks?
Of course I'm concerned about that. Everybody should be. And I think that it's a reflection of our attempts, on the one hand, to get FEMA and DHS funded. We've put bills on the floor of the Senate to do that, and the Republicans have objected to it. At the same time, we're trying to get common sense reforms in, for ICE, because it's just not right for this country to have mass law enforcement or law enforcement knocking down doors without warrants. And we haven't been able to get any agreement from the White House on that. I was not able to hear the entire hearing that was going on in Homeland Security as I was in the other hearing today. But I did hear a little bit. It sounded like our colleague might be abandoning some of the ways in which ICE was, leading assaults on the American people in Minnesota. If that's true, that would be welcome. And I think hopefully we can come to an agreement that can get folks like our FEMA folks and the folks at our airports paid, because they're doing honorable work and it's important to get them paid.
Do you believe that the confirmation process of Senator Markwayne Mullin as Secretary of DHS may create an opening where Democrats could get concessions from the administration on immigration to meet those demands that has been asked of the White House?
I have not seen any sign that the White House will give us any concessions up to this point. And I think they need to listen. The White House needs to listen to the American people. The American people want to have a secure border, but they also want to have an immigration system that leads to economic growth. They also do not want to have a law enforcement system where our federal officers are wearing masks or knocking on doors or pounding down doors without warrants. And I think that's true of Democrats, unaffiliated voters, and Republicans. So I hope that the White House comes to its senses and approaches this in a more patriotic and I would say consistent with the rule of law. We haven't seen any evidence of that so far.
In what appears to be a disagreement with recent policy from the administration, Senator Mullin said that if he were secretary, immigration officers would nearly always need a judicial warrant to enter homes and businesses, not just the administrative warrants that require less burden of proof that are currently being used, or at least have been used in the last year or so. I wonder if you believe him, and as it sounds, you might be open to voting for him, would you?
I would not vote for him. No, I would not vote for him. I think that he's got absolutely the wrong approach on this, but I do think it would be very welcome if the President of the United States accepted what the American people want, is for law enforcement to have a judicial warrant, for law enforcement to not be masked, and for the administration not to be separating children from their parents in the name of the President's immigration policies.
Senator Michael Bennet, we have to leave the conversation there. We very much appreciate your time and sharing your perspective.
Thank you so much thank you for having me.
Of course.